My name's Tim, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this seminar where we'll explore the amazing work of All We Can. If you've been joining us across Festival at Home, you might have already heard mention of bikes. And we're delighted to be working with Cliff College to explore how change begins with a bike across the Festival at Home programme this weekend. You might even get a chance to be a part of our virtual bike-a-thon and join us as Ashley Cooper gets in the saddle and tells us a little bit about his trip to Uganda. Around the world, people live in what's often described as a cycle of poverty, where poverty is passed on from generation to generation, and where people are not able to access the education, the healthcare, the investment that they need to break that cycle, to set the wheels of change in motion. Well, in some of the world's poorest communities, All We Can is working alongside local people to get those wheels moving. And today, you can join us. When we all work together, we can see the cycle of poverty broken in Jesus' name. So, in the next few minutes, you'll hear stories from one of the places where All We Can is working, a community called Butagaya in Uganda. I'll be talking to some of my colleagues and friends, and we'll all go on a journey together to see how change begins with a bike. It is, of course, important to mention that as we share together in this seminar, and as we join as Festival at Home online rather than on the Cliff College site, it's because coronavirus has already had a deep impact around the world, and that impact has been felt in Butagaya and Uganda too. They've been through a lockdown, perhaps not so dissimilar to ours, except in much more challenging circumstances. Feels to me a little bit as if coronavirus has forced us to slam the brakes on in Butagaya, in Uganda. There's so much potential there waiting to be released. There's so much exciting energy about how we can break the cycle of poverty. And yet, just for now, the brakes have been slammed on. Well, what All We Can is doing, working alongside local people, is finding ways to ease those brakes. Finding ways to, despite a global pandemic and lockdowns in many countries, to find a way to see potential fulfilled, to keep breaking those cycles of poverty, whether there's a pandemic in action or not. And so the bicycles you'll hear about in the next few minutes are already being used for lots of different ways in Uganda because of lockdown. Regularly sanitised bicycles are being provided to enable people to access essential healthcare. For example, pregnant women are being carried to hospital on the back of a bike in order to ensure that they can get there safely. And bikes are generally being used to enable people to practice social distancing in a more helpful and healthy way, keeping apart on the roads as they travel for essential food or essential healthcare. Around the world, coronavirus is having a deep impact, but if we all work together, perhaps we can ease those brakes and get the wheels of change in motion again today. Even amongst coronavirus, change begins with a bike. But for now, it's time to saddle up. Let's break the cycle of poverty together. I'm delighted now to introduce my colleague Amy Knott. Hi Amy.
Hiya.
Really nice to have you as part of this seminar today. And Amy is the comms manager at All We Can. And just a few months ago, in what feels like a very different world, Amy and I were in Uganda, where we were meeting some of the communities and the people that All We Can are working with. Amy, just reflect a little bit for us on that trip. What were your immediate reactions to Uganda, and perhaps particularly to the community of Butagaya that we went to go and visit?
Thinking specifically about the communities that we spent time with, and the name of the community that, like Tim said, we spent the most amount of time in was Butagaya. it's a very rural community, and that was really hammered home by just the sheer amount of time that we spent trying to get to these communities. So I can't kind of stress quite how remote these communities are and how separate they are in many ways from the urban centres near them, like Ginger. Another thing that has kind of stayed with me from those communities was just the warmth of the welcome with which we were greeted by everyone that we visited. It was we were made to feel right at home, and everyone welcomed us in, and were so happy and keen to share their stories with us and to share their lives with us. And that generosity, that hospitality and that warm welcome have definitely made a really, really big impact.
Yeah, I remember the warmth of the welcome, definitely. One or two sort of open-armed embraces that you feel like they belong to a time before coronavirus.
Yes.
I think too, really helpful that you identify the distance we had to travel to get there. I think maybe that was one of the things that really struck me, was how far apart everything seemed, especially when the roads were so poor. Journeys felt like a long way. Everything, even as soon as you tried to leave the community, you know, nearest hospital, nearest school, nearest essential service, even nearest place you could buy food, felt like it was a really long way away. And I think one of the significant kind of impacts of that was the high levels of school dropout. I felt like lots of the families and communities we were talking to, people were saying that their children had been going to school up until a point, and it seemed to be the point at which the journey to school became impractical. Yeah, so one of the first families, in fact I think it may have been the first family that we met, was a gentleman called Moses and his lovely family. Amy, do you want to just tell us a little bit about what that meeting was like for you, and maybe a little bit of their story?
So Moses is a bicycle mechanic, and that was a really interesting thing to kind of see and hear him talk about. He's a bicycle mechanic, but he's as a differently abled person, he's come up against lots of difficulties, lots of barriers in his life while he's trying to kind of make a living by working as a bicycle mechanic. His own mobility can be really a limiting factor. He does have a bicycle which he can get around on, but when we met him, the bicycle was in disrepair. There were parts that he needed to fix it, but that he couldn't afford to. And there was just a real juxtaposition between Moses as a bicycle mechanic and everything that he was doing to help the rest of the community access bicycles so they could get around, and his own bicycle, which really poignantly just kind of was just kind of by his workshop falling into disrepair, which sometimes the children would climb on, but ultimately we rarely ever saw in action, and when it was, it didn't really work properly. Moses' family also kind of face a number of difficulties. His daughter Susan has sickle cell disease, which means that her development is impaired, and she faces difficulties as a differently abled person herself as well. He has a younger son called Eria, and so much of the family's burdens fall on Eria. He's just a kid at the end of the day, and he is taking on so much for his mum, for his younger brothers and sisters, and for his dad. He worked throughout the days in the hot sun, and I'm talking really, really hot sun, building and making mud bricks, which were used by the communities. And we saw a lot of that, didn't we, in the kind of driving through the villages. Lots of kilns, lots of bricks being made, obviously kind of a real source of income for people living in that area.
Looks like absolutely back-breaking work though, doesn't it? It's just not fun in that kind of heat. And
no. And messy and sweaty and muddy, and the trek to go and get water to kind of help the brick keep together. And just, I think for me, that work, the sheer duration of time that it would have taken to produce one single brick, with the water and the baking and the putting together and the transporting, was just not fun work, not work that you would want a child, essentially a teenager, a child, to be taking part in. I think I also remember, just kind of on that, Moses' real anguish at that being the situation that his family was in, and that was something that his son had to do. And remember speaking to him and really him really conveying that anger, that this was the situation that his position had put him into, that he wasn't able to provide for his family as he should do. And so that burden falling on Eria was just something that, rightly so, made him angry, made him upset for his son. And he really vividly expressed that he wished that was not something that was having to happen.
Yeah, the frustration of the father, I think, really, really sobering. Area is one young man kind of trying to make his way in a really difficult and challenging context. We met lots of young people trying to do that, and lots of, it felt like you said, your phrase, children or teenagers basically ending up leading their families. Just around the corner from him is that lovely and delightful young lady, Nawalat, who we've talked a lot about since we got back, because I think her story really moved both of us. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about what meeting Nawalat was like?
Yeah, there's meeting Nawalat, and then there's also meeting Nawalat's mother, which is one of those warm welcomes I think you mentioned earlier. She kind of hugged us both like long lost friends. So Nawalat, she lives with her mother and some of her younger siblings. Her father sadly died a couple of years ago, meaning that the household is headed by the mother, and that places kind of additional strains on households where typically there might be two parents working. Now that burden relies on her mum, and it is difficult. And as the eldest daughter, lots fell on Nawalat's shoulders. In terms of chores, in terms of helping cook and clean and care for her younger siblings. She really was carrying a lot of that, and waking up incredibly early in the morning, 5 o'clock or earlier, to be able to do those chores. So waking up at 5 o'clock and doing those chores when she got home from school as well. So Nawalat's journey to school, she told us, could take 2 hours for her to reach school. That's 4 hours every day just walking to and from school. Yeah, I remember really vividly being, surprised, naively surprised by how long it took and how bumpy the journey was and how far away from her home it was. And that for me really hammered home, I think, the importance of the bicycle. I think that single journey, seeing Nawalat's journey to school, was probably the most impactful thing that maybe I saw in that entire trip.
I think the journeys are just over 10 kilometers, so
yes,
an incredibly long way to go. You know, on a nice bike track, that would be quite a long way to go.
Yeah.
Walk it every day on those dusty, hot roads, and dangerous roads too as well. I don't know whether you felt that, but certainly I felt that I wouldn't want to walk those roads at dawn or at dusk, and even into the night, as sometimes it must be dark when she gets home. And
obviously, as a girl, Nawalat would face additional concerns, additional worries while she was doing that journey. And so the bicycle isn't just speeding the journey up; it's protecting her, it's making her safer. It's also freeing up her time as well. And one of the things that really struck me about Nawalat is just her commitment to schooling. She kind of said again and again how much she loved chemistry, which as someone who's always been into kind of history and English, I couldn't necessarily relate to, but it was great to see, and for her to express that that's because she wanted to be a nurse, and just her passion to be able to pursue chemistry, and how the bicycle is enabling that and enabling her to spend more time studying and more time actually in school was really important.
And a kind of really inspiring person to meet, to realise that, you know, in a context where sort of female-headed household is challenging enough anyway, and caring for young siblings is challenging enough anyway, but she wasn't just trying to survive, she wasn't just trying to kind of get through to the next day. She actually had big dreams about the future and about her own future, and hence her commitment to wanting to get to school and wanting to train and wanting to make that long journey every day, despite it seemed that many of the people in the surrounding villages had stopped making that journey because it was too far and too challenging. In both of those stories, the story of Eria and of Nawalat and of her family, we saw how change begins with a bike for them. We mentioned the bicycles, the bicycle that Moses is repairing, the bicycle that's enabling Nawalat to get to school, as it is enabling Eria to continue his education, as well as to fetch water for his bricklaying. Those bicycles are part of All We Can's exciting kind of intervention in this part of the world, and we're doing that alongside the local organisation we work with, our local partner. They're called Fabio, and we've been really excited to work with them on seeing this idea of change beginning with a bike. Amy, we loved spending time with Fabio, didn't we?
We did, yes.
You want to just tell us a little bit about Fabio and their amazing work?
Yeah, Fabio were just a brilliant bunch of people to spend time with. Kind of first and foremost, as a team, they were wonderful, full of life, enjoyable, funny, and kind of above all that, very, very committed to their mission, which is to use bicycles as a tool for development. When I think about Fabio, there's two words that really spring to mind. The first of those being innovation, and the second of those being inclusivity. They are full to the brim of ideas. They are always looking for ways to improve what they're doing, and what they're doing is great, but there's kind of this restless energy that says, we want to improve, we want to make this better for people. How can we make the bicycle work for this family, and how can we change things for this family? And those really embody both inclusivity and innovation for me, looking to see where things can be rethought, looking to see where more people can be brought on board, where more people can be involved. It's really powerful to see that in action, and to see the tangible difference that Fabio were able to make to people's lives through this work. They were fab.
They were part of fun. We do bicycles and we do them really well, and that then we hand them over to the community, and the community turns them into something exciting and something that brings about change, and that helps people break out of the cycle of poverty. And that was so encouraging and inspiring to see in action.
I think it's probably also worth kind of saying that they're given to the community, but beyond that, Fabio are equipping everyone who's using their bicycles with repair kits. They know how to fix basic things for the bike. They're not just kind of being given a bike, but they're being given a skill and an opportunity to learn, and also to kind of continue learning and improving from their bikes. We actually saw bicycles which had been in use, provided by Fabio for more than 20 years, which I think kind of says it all really. They'd lasted, they were still being used, and they'd helped these two women that we met with, they'd helped them absolutely transform their lives. So Fabio, like all of our partners, we want to kind of be alongside our partners. We are in relationship with them. We want to be able to not be in control, but we recognize that all of our partners have as much to teach us and as much to kind of educate us on as we have with them. So it's really important to us, not just with Fabio, but across the board, that we're walking together in true partnership, that we are learning from each other, that we're respecting, most importantly, what the community says they need, so that we're not coming in and saying, oh, we think you might need this, we think you might need this, that we're listening to the real needs on the ground, that solutions are being developed which have genuine, tangible impact to the communities that we serve. That partnership approach obviously really matters to us and the way we talk about it. It's really encouraging to be in Uganda and hear Fabio and the people who work for Fabio talking about that partnership approach and why it matters to them too. And so what we're going to do now is introduce you to two of those people in this next little film. You'll hear from Najiba, who's their chief executive, and then from a lady called Joy, who was our guide for much of the time we were there and who leads on their program's work.
Fabio is an organization that promotes access to socio-economic services. We want to see everyone attending school. We want to see everyone being able to take their produce to the market. We want to see everyone attended to at a healthcare center. Whatever we do rotates around a bicycle. It is simple to use. It does not incur a lot of costs, and it is something that everyone can easily learn.
People were looking at a bicycle as an ordinary tool of transport. But as Fabio, we look at a bicycle as a tool of transformation. And this is where we come in with our programs like Cycle to School.
The idea behind Cycle to School was, how do we keep children in school, especially the girls? One of the challenges is how parents, especially in the rural communities, view their girls. They look at them as a source of income or some kind of property. So when the girl is about the age of 13 and 14, they are given away in exchange of a goat or a cow. And I think this is a problem of mindset, because if this girl is able to go to school and able to earn some money, this family will be better off than getting just a goat or a cow.
The other challenges are the students moving long distances and they are not able to access school in time. There are high rates of school dropouts. And this is why in Nabco's community, you see so many young mothers, because they got overwhelmed by the distance. They got tired, and after dropping out of school, they got pregnant, they gave birth, and their own children also are giving birth when they are young. So that is like a vicious cycle. This is why we feel if we bring in programs that can change the community, we can empower them and we can put an end to this kind of vulnerability.
We are happy that we've benefited a lot of people. We have families that have used this project and they have children that have graduated from university. We have families that are happy that the students that benefited from this project are able to actually take care of their young brothers, their young sisters. So this is the whole idea behind Cycle to School.
So as Fabio, we said when we give this student a bike, they will use the same bike at home to do the house chores and these other tasks like fetching water, going to the garden, helping out their parents, and they are able to use one bicycle as a tool to transform the entire family. So this is why we treasure bicycles so much.
When you understand the dynamics within the community, when you understand the needs, you're able to innovate. That is the core of Fabio. From planning, from execution, from implementation, from monitoring, we need to include every stakeholder through the entire process. I'm very happy to work with all we can, because sometimes what fails partnership is when you don't feel open with each other, you can't communicate with each other. All we can has allowed us to be flexible in our planning. We are not told what to do, rather we discuss and we agree on what to do. That is one of the most important things. We learn together, we change together, we improve together, and for us that is very important.
Coming up next, we hear from Matt and his family's experience of learning how to ride a bike, and learn how you can help people like Nawalat in Uganda. Delighted to have with me now Matt Forsyth, one of my colleagues who works with me on the churches team at All We Can. I believe during lockdown in your family you've had a bit of first-hand experience of that. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about your lockdown bike stories?
Yeah, I mean, Olivia, who's age 6 now, when she first got on the bike with stabilisers, her confidence was so low on it. She hasn't ridden it for 2 years, basically. But during lockdown, we thought, actually, you know what? Time is now to get back on the bike and to try to see if we can get her cycling and see if she can learn how to cycle. So we got the bike out, dusted it off, and she started going on the stabilisers, and she begun ever so slightly to grow in that confidence. And after a little while being on the stabiliser, she got used to it. And what was really cool to see is that every single day as she grew in confidence, she wanted to get back on the bike. We tried her out on the field for the first time, fell off a few times, but we put her onto the pavement not too far from my house, and the difference was amazing. Just in 3 weeks, she's managed to go from not wanting to go on the bike ever again to I want to go on my bike every single day and get out on it. And so to see her confidence grow and that change in her because of the bike has been dramatic. And for a parent to see their children and their child just to flourish just because of one simple piece of apparatus, it's been a real joy in quite a difficult lockdown. So that's all been because of the bike.
I learned to ride my bike and it's very fun. Whee!
What a lovely story. Thanks so much, Matt, and a huge thank you to Olivia for taking some time out to tell us a little bit about how change begins with a bike for you in Peterborough. If change begins with a bike for Matt and his family, then change certainly begins with a bike in Butagaya for Eria and his family, and Nawalat and her family, where in such a different context and with so many challenges that they face, the bike is not just a tool for transportation or a luxury toy. The bike is a genuine tool for transformation and an essential part of how they're rebuilding their lives, an essential part of how they're breaking the cycle of poverty. In this next little film, we'll hear a little bit more of their story, and you'll be invited to be a part of that change.
Our biggest challenge is we take care of my elderly mother and 7 grandchildren. It costs a lot and our income is very small.
I really want to go to school, but it's a long way and I have a lot of chores to do first.
Life has been very hard because I'm a differently abled person and I am struggling to support my family.
It's not what I want to do, but I have to make bricks to help my family.
For families like these, change begins with a bike. Change begins with your regular support. For Moses' son Ariel, having a bike means freedom.
Now I can get to school and not make bricks all the time.
For Moses, it means now he can earn some money.
My bicycle repair business will grow and I'll be able to feed my family.
For Florence and David's extended family, it means an additional income.
The bike makes it easier for our grandson Andrew to sell his fish at market and get to school.
And for Nawalat, it means the future she's always dreamed of.
I use my bike to get to school so I can be a nurse one day.
Change begins with a bike. Begin this journey as a regular giver. See the cycle of poverty broken for £6 a month.
You've heard how change begins with a bike. Well, now it's over to you, because today change can begin with you. Will you join our growing movement of people who are supporting all we can regularly, so that it's not just that we're able to be there in times of emergency, but that we can be there over the longer term, that we can genuinely help to break the cycle of poverty for people like Nawalat and Eria and communities like Butagaya all over the world. Will you join us today? Why don't you visit allwecan.org.uk/cliff to make your commitment today. God bless you, and thanks for being a part of our seminar.